What's up, everybody? Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and today we are doing a Patreon pick. Once a month, our patrons get to vote on and pick a video for me to react to anything of their choice. We put up a poll and they get to pick, and the winner today, the winner is Fit for a King Backbreaker. Now, I'm excited about this one because we don't get a lot of we get a good amount, but we don't get a lot of pure fry screams on the channel, and it's been a while since I heard Fit for a King. But from what I remember, Ryan Kirby, I think is their vocalist's name, he's predominantly a fry guy, and I'm predominantly a false chord guy, so this will be kind of fun to dig into and piece apart. Now, if you're new to the channel, again, my name is Mark. I am a vocal coach, as well as the vocalist in 3 bands, Kardashev, Neverbreath, and Viremia. And what we do is we take the reaction format, we break it down, we make it educational, we have some fun, so that way you come away from this learning something as well. Now, if you have fun, let me know in the comments below. Helps out a lot. It's a great time. Give it a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff that helps out with the algorithm. But that's enough of that. Without further ado, let's hop into Fit for a King Backbreaker.
Light the match! Set my body ablaze! There's no longer a time when your mind is stuck in a cloudy haze. Pressure pushes its way inside. No room to move, nowhere to hide. Can't fight the strength within myself. The weight of life has pushed me to a living hell. Endless misery, lack of sympathy. I don't trust the voice inside of me.
Okay, so that seems like a good moment, but we've got a good time. Let's go back because I want to hear that Backbreaker one more time. It's the name of the song, so clearly they put some some effort to it. So yeah, just as I suspected, we're getting predominantly fry screams here, and we're getting now. One thing that's kind of weird is the way fry screams are described and the way fry screams are referred to can kind of vary. I've noticed channel by channel and person by person. Now, just so we can all speak the same language, generally, the common consensus, if you're out there and you're kind of feeling confused, is you're like, what's the difference here? There are tons of videos out there that talk about the difference of false chord and fry screams, so I'm not going to go into like a 20-minute thing. Most of those videos on various channels have done a great job of explaining it. But to put it pretty simply, a false chord scream, which is opposite from this, involves no vocal fold engagement, at least when you're starting. No vocal fold engagement, and will utilize your false chords, which are above the true chords, to vibrate and create distortion. On the opposite end of the spectrum, a fry scream, mostly according to I've noticed that deathcore and death metal people refer to fry screams and talk about them differently than rock and contemporary people. So I'm speaking more in that language right now, the deathcore, death metal view of things. But we're actually going to hold our vocal folds together, right? And we're going to move a little bit of air, right? A little bit of air through that space to create a little bit of a vibration from the vocal folds themselves. Now, when we project it, right, we aim this air, this resonance upwards, so we're getting a lot of the actual grit that you hear, not from the vocal folds themselves, but from the soft tissues above, which is the same thing you actually do with a false chord scream. So in that way, they're very, very similar. But the generation method, if you go to the very bass sound, and that's where I start with a lot of my students, just finding the bass sound first before actually screaming, those two are very, very different, right? And there are a couple of different ways that you can approach it. I find that the best way with my students who really want to do fry, they're not too interested in false chord, which is totally fine. You can either one is you can do so many things with either one. One thing I find helps is to help them realize that fry is a behavior of vocal folds and airflow, right? Working together at a specific balance. Now, the easiest way to understand fry is that we all do it all the time. You can actually hear it in my voice right now when I'm talking. It's that bubbly noise, right? Now that in our lower register, fry is actually your lowest speaking register that you have. You'll notice if you start here, hey, your voice will naturally fry as you get lower. Now you may have to go pretty low if you're like a bass or something, but you'll feel that poppiness. Now that is going to be really hard to project into a scream. Matt Heafy or Heffy, people pronounce it differently. I've always heard it Heafy. From Trivium, he manages to do that. Not many people do or can. Now there are always outliers, but most of the time when we're hearing Fry screams like this, they're actually a little bit higher. So instead of we have more of an sound in the background. Now, again, this is the bass level sound. Just like if I was teaching somebody false chord, we wouldn't start with a full scream. We'd go, right? That's where you start. So that more TV static sound, covering the mic, that more TV static sound that I did, that's the bass level for a Fry scream. And getting comfortable with that is a good place to start. I could go on and on about that forever because it's really interesting. But one quick exercise that you can do, there are a lot of them. Ooh, here's a good one. Shout out to my boy Justin in Tala. He and I were talking about vocals, and he actually showed me one of his favorites, which is to start on a higher note, right? And this, this can be relative per person depending on the shape of your vocal folds and your anatomy. But starting at a really, really quiet falsetto or breathy note, I like to do a C4. Hey, right there. Don't control it. It can be a little sharp. It can be a little flat. We want this to sound crappy. Hey, right there. And then slowly raise that up. Imagine you're practicing your vocals. The image he used is you're practicing your vocals in bed and you don't want to wake your partner up. You'll find this place where your vocal folds will start to fry and crackle naturally. And then just hang out in that spot when you find it. Last thing I'll say about Fry, because I know I'm talking a lot, but this has got my gears going. This is a great pick. Patrons, I appreciate you. We need to approach these vocals differently. False chord is like your barbarian class. You got your two-handed warhammer, you're smashing through things. Of course, there's technique to it, but you're barking, you're grunting, you're yelling, you're screaming, right? Fry vocals, at least when we start, you're much more of a rogue. You've got your rapier, you've got your daggers, you're flipping him, you're finessing, you're dodging, right? It's much more, Fry vocals require a lot of finesse, and they're very delicate when you start. Anybody can do it, but just approach it differently. Let's keep going though, because this song's dope. I'm gonna go back a little bit just so we can kind of hear this lead in, but I love the way that he screamed Backbreaker. Let's go.
If words are words, then I think we want to play. Backbreaker, sever all the ties, sever all the lies. Backbreaker, reach inside and see if I'm living.
Y'all, check that out. The way he says sever all the ties, sever all the lies. You can hear him going from more of a true chord sound to a false chord sound. Now, of course, true chord sound to a Fry sound. Now, of course, the Fry distortion, we use our vocal folds for it. So technically they're both true chord sounds, but just like your normal phonated voice and then your Fry phonated voice. Let's think of it that way. This is really cool. Listen to the way he says this. That requires a lot of finesse. So we our two main vocalization muscles in and around our vocal folds are the TA, thyroarytenoid, and CT, cricothyroid muscles, and those involve stretching, lengthening and shortening. We should say lengthening and shortening, and adducting and abducting the vocal folds. So making them taller and thinner for higher pitches, and putting them closer together, right? And so doing that is you basically have like four different muscle group or two muscle groups, four different muscles, controlling that slight, and this is the level of finesse that you need for false chord or fry screams. Why am I messing that up today? Fry screams, get it right. Fry screams. This is the level of finesse that you need. I'll show you one other exercise in a second here that you can use to build this, but he's doing an excellent job. It's one thing to be able to just hold a fry tone, and another to be able to move from clean to fry just like that. Excellent work. But let's keep going.
Backbreaker, everything consuming.
Okay, we got a black screen. I'm going to go back a little bit so we can listen to that again, but this seems like it's a short song too. We've only got about 1 minute left, so let me just get some information out there for you. We'll go back and then we'll just finish the song out. Okay, so a couple things I'm hearing. He's also going to what I consider to be more of a gritty belt than a fry scream, and that's when you can hear his true voice. When I say true voice, I mean this sound right here, right? My speaking voice, the sound that is associated with my name, Mark, the Mark voice that you hear. When you hear that kind of breaking and popping underneath, and he's projecting that distortion up and that resonance out and forward, that I consider that to be not everybody does, and it's totally fine. I consider that to be a separate screaming style, a different scream from a fry and a false chord. Although sometimes, again, when you're like watching channels that are more focused on like rock music or like prog or contemporary music, or even like a gospel, right? There are channels that focus on gospel and they talk about like growling and squalling and things like that. They'll sometimes mention fry screams too, and you're usually referencing screams that sound like this. So don't get too caught up in the terminology. But the reason I think of them as something different is because we're using a lot more structures. Right? We're true chord phonating. We're using our vocal folds to create a little bit of that fry, crackly, breaking sound. Our false chords are coming together, not creating a ton of distortion, creating some, but mostly compressing that airflow. Our retinoid cartilages, which are kind of above the vocal folds, are coming together, and those are sort of rumbling around as well. And then, of course, we're vibrating the soft palate and projecting all of this up and forward. So to me, it's different because it's like so many things happening at once and can sound so different person to person, but he's doing it really, really well. Now, I want to take a second and talk about what I mean when I say projecting your resonance up and forward. Okay. Because resonance can be kind of a tricky thing to get, and it's totally understandable because you can't like touch it tangibly, but you can feel it, right? So a good order of operations. This is a bit of a simplification, but it can be a good way when we're screaming on our own and something doesn't feel right for us to double check what's going on. So kind of starting from the top down, your resonance, where you place your voice, will guide your distortion, and your breath support will guide your resonance, right? So let's say my scream here, my wife's in a meeting, so I'm going to do a quiet, like little quiet like she's in a video call. So I'm going to do a quiet like little one. Right, that's a false chord gurgle. Let's say that sound isn't feeling right. It's down in my throat. Right, you can hear the difference. Ooh, that's not comfortable. What am I doing wrong? Well, my resonance needs to be forward. Right, in my nose. Right there, yeah, masky. And if I can't move it forward, I need to think about the positioning of the back of my tongue and whether or not I'm using my abdominals to push that resonance where it needs to be. Function of the tongue and the breath support. Right. And then when these things work together, we get that nice distortion. There's something else that I wanted to mention, but I can't remember what it is. Let's just keep going. I'm going to go back and we'll finish the song out. This song is it gets you thinking. It gets the brain juices going. Let's go about here.
Backbreaker, sever all the ties, sever all the lies. Backbreaker, everything consuming.
Mouth shape's a big one. Mouth shape's a big one.
The world is watching. Their eyes are piercing me now.
Cool.
I feel the pressure. This will be my
I was wondering if he would do that. So back, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we're going to check that out one more time. It was a while ago. There was this clip going around of this guy Fit for a King playing a show, and he held a scream for 30 seconds, right? And it was like this huge, like, you know, challenge across the internet. Now, this is back before like TikTok and all those things were big, where, you know, you could like, oh, do this challenge, do that challenge, but it was like this huge thing. And that, I think, obviously it's not where like the discussion between false chord and fry started, but I think a lot of people became more aware of how different the techniques can be depending on what you're trying to do. Now, a fry scream is okay, I'm not going to say always, because there's always that one outlier that's just like not a human that can do crazy things. But generally, 90% of the time, if you're looking to hold out really long screams without taking a breath, fry is going to be your go-to. Because think about it. We're covering the airway and permitting a small amount of air through, versus bringing together two kind of like flabby little false chords above the vocal folds and having them kind of just jumble around like this, right? There's more air going through. Now, that's not to say that you can't compress your airflow and use false chords to get through really long sentences. You just do it differently. Rather than doing it on one breath, you do it with strategic breathing, holding the ribs out, taking your breath in low, sipping off the top because you have a pressurized reserve. So you can do the same thing with each vocal style. Although if you want to do these 20, 30 second held out screams, false chord's going to be the tougher of the two. False chord's going to be the tougher of the two, unless you're really willing to not care too much about volume, and you're doing like that slammy, gurgly, like the really quiet, really gurgly stuff. Then you can probably do it. But that even airflow, really good, solid muscle control, in a beautifully pressurized reserve by way of ribs held out and pressure in the abdominal cavity, pushing that diaphragm up, kind of squeezing that air in the lungs. That's how he's doing it, and he's doing it awesome. Let's check that out one more time from when the screen comes back.
The world is watching. Their eyes are piercing me.
Very emotional. I like this part. Really good storytelling.
This will be my
He also picked a good vowel. Let's call it good there. He picked a good vowel for that scream. Ah. Even though the word would be pronounced I think the word he was saying was head, maybe. I was just staring at it. How do I not know? End. Jesus. The word he was using was end. But you get a little bit more forward resonance. And it's going to allow everything to be nice and even and controlled. Anyway, I can talk about this song for a long time. It's a banger. Thank you, patrons, for picking a good one. Apologies that there was a little bit of a delay on this video. Everything exploded. Everything blew up last month. My equipment went crazy, but as promised, here it is for you. Keep up the good work. Again, thank you to all my lovely patrons. If you want to become a patron, support the channel, check it out. Feel free to. We have an awesome Discord server. We've got a couple dates set to all play Jackbox and Among Us and Phasmophobia and just do some cool stuff coming up. And again, what was it? Oh yeah. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. It really does help out a lot. And I am a vocal instructor focusing mostly on metal. So if you're looking to do opera or something, I might point you elsewhere. Charismatic voice would be my first pick. Or actually, speaking of that, shout out to all my new friends I've made over the past couple months. The Charismatic Voice has been huge in helping us learn how to build a channel. Chase Carnison, Tank the Tech, Julia Nyland, Beth Roars. We've all been chatting and hanging out and having a great time, and I appreciate the little community that we're building. So thank you very much for that. Now I have to edit this audio and get some other stuff done. So, as always, many thanks. Much love. I'm out.